Hi everybody, this is Michelle and I would like to welcome you to the launch of our very new language screencasting project for secondary section. The idea of this is to give everyone in secondary access to a refresher guide to language in small doses every single week. So we can look at this as kind of our language wakey shakey for secondary. The idea is that you watch one very short language focused video during registration time just once a week. Some weeks will be a refresher or an extension of what you already know, and other weeks will offer new content. But the idea is to give learners in secondary a chance to access a kind of language guide to support them as they work across the curriculum. Just to let you know where we're going to start, I want to give you a quick overview of how we assess English and Spanish as a second language here at CGB and where we really need everybody to be and when. So if you look up here, this is English as a second or additional language. And this down here is Spanish as a second language. So really what we're looking at is the English bit up here in secondary. And what you can see is that here is the Common European Framework guideline here. Okay, so here is A1, which is total beginner, and that's the idea that people come in year one with that level. And it goes all the way up to C2, which is native speaker level proficiency and actually post-advanced. What this means is that what we need by the end of secondary is for students to be at level C2, which means total academic proficiency and access to every single aspect of language, both written and spoken, in all situations. This is pretty tough to do. And in actual fact, the Colombian Ministry of Education only asks people to be at this level when they leave school, which is only B1+. However, we know that at CGB we ask a lot more of our students in terms of their language, so we want students that leave CGB to have a level of C2. That means that they're really academically bilingual, not just fluent. This also means that we're giving our students, that extra edge over students from other schools, and it will also give our students, again, the best possible chance to do brilliantly in their IB and international exams, as well as any language exams that are on offer, like IELTS or ESOL or TOEFL or SATs, which a lot of universities ask for. So the idea of these screencasts is to go back to some of the basics and fill in any language gaps that you might have, and also to start raising everyone's awareness of what language systems might be causing problems or limiting your academic success. Basically, we're going to learn new ways to talk about language and language systems, which will hopefully open a lot of doors to discussion and invite questions about language systems. Just to clarify, when I talk about language systems, I mean that there's a difference between skills and systems. Skills are your things like reading, writing, listening, speaking. There are sub-skills involved in this, but those are the basic four. Systems, on the other hand, are these things here. And they're the other aspects of language learning: grammar, vocabulary, discourse, pronunciation. Obviously, it's very difficult to have skills without strong systems underneath them, and you can't really show your control of systems without using your skills, so they all work together. The problem is that if there are any big gaps in any of these systems, it's going to make it difficult then to build your skills, which is generally how we're assessed in the different subjects. So the idea here of these screencasts is to make sure that everybody's skills and systems are working together and to make the woohoo girls smile. So where should we begin? Well, in secondary, we begin work at FCE level. So the idea is to go through and cover the topics starting with B1 and working all the way through to C2, which you saw on the Common European Frame map. I'm pretty sure that this will help us to open a dialogue and a discourse about languages and language learning that can only benefit students and their teachers. If you can advocate for yourself and you can discuss language with your teacher in any of your subjects, this is a really powerful tool to language acquisition and to being an active language learner. So being able to talk about language systems will also help you when you want to learn a third, fourth or fifth language as well. So this is a fantastic place to start. So the topic of the week is going to be related to tense and aspect, and we're going to start with the different ways that we use the present simple. So just have a look at this little picture which outlines what the present simple actually is. It's one of the most basic verb forms. Here you can see your form, here you can see the question, here you can see the negative, and here's a bit about how it's used. We're going to come back to that in a second because I just want to clarify how the verb system in English works. It's divided into two fields. Here we have tense and here we have aspect. Tense is the past, the present or the future. This means that you're locating the verb in time. This is usually pretty easy and it's quite similar for many cultures and many languages. The trickier part is this part here, which is the aspect. This tells you really how the person who's speaking is looking at time, their perspective. There are several aspects in the English verb system which differ quite a lot to a lot of different languages. We have the simple, the perfect, the progressive, which we also call the continuous, or the perfect progressive, or the perfect continuous. So this one here is like a mixture of these two here. If you want to stop the screencast and have a closer look, then feel free, but we are going to come back to this time and time again. Not every verb construction is on this chart, but the tense and aspect system is. So it might help to get an overview of how everything works together, and then we can start to think about how we are going to apply what we know. But what we're going to look at today is this one, the present simple. So here is your tense, and here is your aspect, and here is where they meet. Okay? Anyway, for now, it's enough just to know that we're looking at the present simple. Present is the tense or the time, and the simple is the aspect or the way that we're looking at that time. So let's look first of all at the form. What are the building blocks that make this work? I'm absolutely sure that you all know the form from back to front and upside down. However, there are some slips that people tend to make. So here's the basic form. I sing, you sing, he sings. Da-da-da, negative and question. Now, what interests me more actually are some of the mistakes that people make and why they make them. So just have a look at the sentences and think about what's wrong. Just stop the screencast for a minute and have a look. These are mistakes that come up again and again and again at every single level of English, and it's something that's actually very, very easy to correct as long as you know why the mistakes are being made. So what do you think? Okay, this is the form. So now we're going to have a think about meaning. What does it mean? What does the verb actually communicate, and when and how do we use it? Which is slightly trickier because that really relates more to usage than to form. It's quite easy to make the form, but to actually know when to use it and how to use it is a little bit different. So basically the present simple is used to talk about things that are true. We use it to talk about people's habits. For example, he eats too much. He doesn't drink enough water. We use it to talk about recurrent truths, things that are true again and again and again. For example, the sun rises in the east. This happens more than once, doesn't it? Permanent truths or states. I live here. I like chocolate. General truths. I don't know if this general truth is actually true. I'm English and I don't drink a lot of tea, but it is a perception, so we can call it a general truth. English people drink a lot of tea. We also use it to talk about mathematical and scientific truths. For example, 2 + 2 makes 4. And we can also use it to talk about internal truths. I think he's nice. This expresses a mental state. So these are the most common usages, but there are also other interesting ways to play with the present simple which will help extend your range and control. For example, these are the sort of fancier uses. We can use it as a narrative device to create a dramatic effect. For example, in a live commentary or an event like a football match when the movement is really, really fast. So instead of saying he is shooting, he is scoring, we say he shoots, he scores. We can also use it in newspaper headlines to great effect. Instead of saying scientists have found a new star or scientists found a new star, we can use the present tense in informal or colloquial narratives or jokes. For example, so this man goes into a restaurant and he says, "Do you serve frogs?" The waiter says, "Yes." So the man says, "Right, I'll have a coffee for myself and some flies for my frog." This use is not seen as entirely educated, but it does exist, so it is good to be aware of it. Another slightly strange or different usage of the present simple is that we use it to talk about timetables or schedules in the future with a time marker. So for example, I could say, "Hurry up, we have to run, the train leaves at 2 p.m. and that's fine because we're talking about a scheduled event in the future. Okay, there are some other things to think about or to remember when you're using the present simple. So for example, if you have a look at these two sentences here, I see what you mean, but I don't agree, or I do see what you mean, but I don't agree. What's the difference between the two of them? So there's some other things to remember when we're thinking about the present simple. For example, and actually this goes across a lot of different verb constructions. If you want to be more emphatic, you can use the auxiliary verb or the helping verb in the positive statement, which we don't normally do. Normally we would only use this word do to make a question. What do you mean? Or a negative, I don't know what you mean. We don't normally put it in a sentence, but it's a nice way of being a little bit emphatic. But you do have to be a little bit careful. It's a nice little trick, but don't overdo it because otherwise in your writing and in your speaking it can be a little bit annoying. But if you want to add special emphasis, you can add the auxiliary verb. Something else to remember is that we often use adverbs of time with the present simple. Adverbs of time are the words that tell us how often something happens. So for example, always, usually, sometimes, often, and never. But have a look at the two sentences. Where does the adverb go? So we said the adverb is this word, usually, and always. Where do you see it in the sentence? This is a neutral sentence, so where do you see it? If you look at the second pattern, we've got the same two words, usually and always, but where are they in the sentence? Why? That's the key question. Okay. So to wrap up, the idea of this screencast was really to extend your understanding of the applications of the present simple in different contexts. So hopefully we've shown you a couple of new things that you can use in your different curriculum subjects. We aren't going to be working on tense systems every week, but we will be dipping in and out of all of the different systems to make sure that there's a balance and an element of surprise. So make sure you stay tuned for next week. So thanks for listening, and over the next week before our next screencast, just see if you can identify different examples of the present simple and why they're used in that context in the different texts that you come across this week, in science and history and English, etc, etc. And of course, if you want some extra practice, you can always watch this screencast again, or you can ask your ALD language teacher for some extra ideas on how you can extend this aspect of your language range. So I'm sending a big cheeky goodbye grin your way and saying a big cheeky ciao for now.